Samantha Power is an American government official, political scientist, and journalist with Irish origins. She is also a professor at Harvard University and the author of 4 books on education, peace, and human rights. For her book Trouble from Hell, America in the Age of Genocide, Power won the Pulitzer Prize. Since 2021, she is the administrator of the United States Agency for International Development. Prior to that, Samantha Power served as a U.S. permanent representative to the United Nations and as Barack Obama's senior foreign policy advisor during his campaign. Times magazine described her as Power, the managing director of the Carr Center for Human Rights at Harvard, is a new voice of conscience for the U.S. foreign policy elite. Power has been named one of the 100 most influential books on the planet. At the first C5+1 summit of U.S. and the Central Asian presidents in September in New York, it was announced that USAID will call a C5+1 regional ministerial conference on interconnectivity in Central Asia in October. For example, the USAID administrator hosted the first C5+1 ministerial meeting in Samarkand.
Today's episode interview is a special and exclusive for Report TV with the administrator of United States Agency for International Development, USAID, Ms. Samantha Power. Good afternoon, Ms. Power. It's a great pleasure to see you here in our country in Samarkand. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm not sure I've ever had a backdrop like this to do an interview, so it's going to be very hard for me to pay attention to the interview itself when there's such spectacular beauty behind me.
Square, exactly. So we know that you are very busy, so let's get started right now. So my first question about the cooperation between Uzbekistan and USAID. What are the key priorities which USAID is focusing on when it comes to the cooperation between the USAID and Uzbekistan, and what's make this cooperation unique?
Well, I think that Uzbekistan is in the middle of a unique reform effort. I mean, I have not visited before. This is my first time in the country, but I gather if I had come here a decade ago, things would feel really differently. I think young people would feel different about their future. Business people would feel different about the prospects of starting businesses. There was a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy in people's lives. I think there still is a fair amount of that, not only in this country, in many countries. But I think what is really special about what's happening in Uzbekistan now is the young people wanting to stay in Uzbekistan, wanting to build their lives here. I met yesterday with a group of high school students, and they asked me the hardest questions, but also told me about their dreams of being engineers, being film producers, novelists. I mean, just the talent that is here, but also now with a reform agenda that is very, very ambitious. And we've already seen that bear fruit with violence to combat, legislation to combat violence against women, anti-child labor and anti-trafficking legislation. But I think in the economic sphere, we are seeing much more reform that seeks to empower entrepreneurs to create, to build, to grow. And so when USAID sees around the world reform moments, we really want to leap, because those moments sometimes don't last for very long. Here there has been 6 years of economic reform, and now also the question of the political reforms and how the economic and the political reforms go together. And this is something I had a chance to talk to the president about. That is the next phase of reform, is to see the political reform and the economic reform going hand in hand. Because when I go back to the United States and I say, Uzbekistan is open for business, you should check it out. You know, people also want to know, okay, well, am I going to know if something is going wrong? Are people able to raise their voices and alert officials to the fact that there might be corruption, or that there might be something that stands in the way? And so we are very excited about this next phase of partnership here in Uzbekistan. We're also really excited about Uzbekistan as part of a region that holds tremendous promise. I mean, if the trade connectivity among the countries of Central Asia can be improved, which USAID wants to help with reforms in those areas as well, that is going to unlock even more economic opportunity for the people of this country and the people of the other countries of the region.
Central Asian region, yeah. Thank you. So my next question about the environmental issues. Globally, this issue is becoming very, very popular. And how do USAID address this question, environmental issues, in cooperation with Uzbekistan?
Well, I would say that we think about climate change in two ways. First, we want to help Uzbekistan and the other countries of Central Asia transition as quickly as possible to renewable energies. Not only does that do less environmental damage, does it cut down on more warming that could happen in the future, but it's actually good for human health and it's cheaper. Clean energy now, by and large, is going to be cheaper for citizens. So as a development agency wanting to help citizens, enjoy their lives and have money to be able to spend, actually shifting to clean energy sooner is going to be better for consumers. So that's climate mitigation. But USAID is also recognizing that climate change is here. The United States is a major source of emissions. We are one of the countries most responsible for rising temperatures, and we feel a responsibility as USAID to work with farmers who are dealing now with more drought, less predictable weather patterns, to deal with farmers who now might need technology to be able to study satellite data to know when the rains are likely to come or not come. We, USAID, invest in research to try to create drought-resistant seeds that need less water to grow. We heard a lot today, in fact, about drip irrigation and the importance of drip irrigation. So that's just in the climate domain, but with so many natural disasters, with flooding and the like, it's also really important to have the technical expertise to build infrastructure in a way that makes it less susceptible to extreme weather events. So that's climate adaptation. And so I think both in transition to renewables and in helping citizens of Uzbekistan deal with the climate change that is already here, we have a lot of work to do. And President Mirziyoyev is very enthusiastic, I think, about growing work in both clean energy and in climate adaptation.
Yes. A few questions about C5+1. What is the priority Central Asia countries for the US foreign policy? Are they priority at all? And is this beneficial for United States to cooperate with Central Asian countries jointly in C5+1 format rather than separately with each country?
Well, I would say both and. So I think that there are huge advantages to the kinds of bilateral programs that USAID has run in Uzbekistan since 1993. We've invested $640 million here in Uzbekistan over that period of time in agriculture, in education, in combating domestic violence. I mean, so many sectors supporting SMEs. I've announced new bilateral investments on this trip that I think are very important. But at the same time, in order for those SMEs to be able to not only sell their goods or their services here in Uzbekistan, but to go further afield, the C5+1 format is very valuable. And today we really talked about two things. We talked about energy connectivity across the C5+1 and what investments USAID and the rest of the United States government can make in helping connect electricity, hydroelectricity, let's say in one country, with consumers of electricity in another. That's, I think, a growth area. And then second, one of the things that holds back trade is a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy and red tape at the borders. And if we are able to digitize, if we were able to simplify, if we were able to harmonize so that the systems in Uzbekistan resembled the systems in Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan, then what you would have is fewer delays in terms of transit and, best of all, cheaper products that will cross borders and be more appealing to consumers. So figuring out how to accelerate the trading relationships and cut down the barriers in the C5+1 format is really, really important. And USAID has not only our bilateral program here in Uzbekistan, but we have a regional mission that is based in Kazakhstan that thinks only how do we enhance the connectivity across the countries of Central Asia. And so that regional mission works in tandem with our bilateral mission here to see, okay, what do we have to do in Uzbekistan, but also what does Uzbekistan want USAID to be urging happen in Tajikistan, or Kyrgyzstan, or Turkmenistan, for example.
Yesterday you met with President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. So my question, what did you talk during the meeting with President Shavkat Mirziyoyev? And what did you discuss some new specific projects?
Absolutely. I would say our discussion, ran the gamut. We had a very lengthy and very fulsome discussion of investments that we can make in the agricultural sector, in SMEs. We announced an additional several $millions of investment in small businesses here in Uzbekistan, grants that will support about 100 businesses. We talked about the education work that USAID has done over the years. Our education materials and our teacher training have reached about 6 million young Uzbek students, about 10,000 schools, particularly with English language materials. Now that Uzbekistan is trying to expand English language training, we are very eager, again, to spread those programs further. We talked about the importance of inclusive education, so that, for example, children with disabilities, like a young child I just met in the art house here in Samarkand, that a child who, just because he has Down syndrome doesn't mean he's not entitled as well to an education. And so USAID is now announcing that we are increasing our investments in inclusive education to support the government in reaching its goal of being able to ensure that children with disabilities get access to education. This issue of paperwork and red tape matters at the borders, as we've discussed in the trade context, but it also matters in the lives of Uzbeks. And I think one of the things that was very exciting to talk to the president about is what more can we do to make life simpler for an Uzbek citizen. If they want to get access to services, if they want to complain that a service isn't working the way they hoped, if they want a marriage license, or we see a wedding here on the square, to get access to their wedding certificate, if they want to open a bank account, simplification and ease of the citizen experience is something I think that we could do something very ambitious on in the coming years. So at the end of the meeting, the president said, I want to see the roadmap for how we de-bureaucratize, how we get rid of these burdens on businesses and on citizens. And the last thing we talked about is what I mentioned at the beginning, which is how economic and political reform go hand in hand. The president has talked about the importance of a constructive opposition. He's talked about the importance of a free press. And things have definitely changed here and improved in terms of the level of openness. That is a critical ingredient to the kind of economic progress that the president and his team are seeking, because when there is rule of law, when the media can expose corruption, that media is a friend to the anti-corruption agenda that the president is attempting to prosecute across the country. And so making sure that those checks and balances in Uzbek society, beyond the executive branch, that those are thriving. And that's one of the reasons that USAID trains journalists on fact-checking and on proper reporting, trains journalists on how to make money, because it's very difficult, as you know, for media as a business in the age of social media, where people can get their news for free. Many citizens don't want to pay for it. So USAID does a lot in helping media organizations increase their profitability. And that, I think, could be an important check and balance, again, on the broader work that is going on here.
I got all the answers to my questions, really. So just interested. You're so successful woman, politician, and you have so beautiful family, children. How do you manage to balance them with this, your work, job, your career with the family?
Well, the positive is that when I go home, my daughter is now a collector of snow globes. You know, the glass dome and what a snow globe. So every country I visit, I bring home to her a snow globe, which usually in the stores they choose the thing that they are most proud of. So after our interview, I have to go to the store and find the perfect Samarkand snow globe. But I try to make my kids feel the sense of discovery that I feel every time I get to travel. But for every parent, not just women, but I think especially mothers, you feel the pull in your heart. It feels as if you wish you could clone yourself and be in two places at once. Right now, I'd like to be with my daughter, getting her ready for school, but I also really want to be in Samarkand looking at what we can do to support the Uzbek people. So you just try to find a balance, but I think no mother feels like they have the perfect balance. No one that I've ever met has the perfect balance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your interview. It was great to talk to you.
You
Thank
too.
you very much.
Thank you.